Welcome to the KIX EAP podcast, your monthly podcast with important leaders in education from Eastern Europe, Middle East and North Africa, Central Asia, and the Asia Pacific. I'm your host, Ryan Allen, assistant professor at Chapman University here in Southern California, and my own background is in international and comparative education. Let's start the show. We have a wonderful guest today, Aminath Shafiya Adam, an assistant professor at the Maldives National University, and we go through her educational background, her teaching and research experience, and then also the impact that she's having on the Maldives and some of the barriers that this island nation faces. It's a wonderful interview, and she's just such a positive person. I think everyone is going to really enjoy this. So let's jump to it. All right, Shafiya, thanks for joining us today. If we could jump into your educational background, I see that you did a bachelor's degree in Egypt and then a master's degree in Malaysia, and then you did your doctoral work in New Zealand. So can you maybe kind of talk about your journey? And it's such a globe-trotting experience, I think.
It's very true, Alan. Actually, when I recall back how I actually started my education, it was very, very interesting. Like I had my education at the early stage in Arabic medium, which I had my school in up until secondary. I completed an Arabic school, and then I got the government scholarship to study in Egypt, and that's normally given when high achievers for high achievers. So I was very fortunate to have the government scholarship, and then what I studied was teaching. So I became a teacher. I had my bachelor of education there, but believe me, but it was such a great experience because I finished my school at the very, very young age, because normally the Arabic system, they also finish about 18 years at the end of the secondary school, but I completed my school at 17 because I was 1 year younger. And then I remember actually celebrating my first 17th birthday in Egypt. I was very, very young, going to a hostel, living there, seeing new people, especially someone who's coming from a very small country where we have never seen what people are living outside our country. So it was kind of really interesting. I had such a great experience in Egypt for about 9 years, and I completed my degree. I got married. I got my first baby, and then I completed my postgraduate study, and then yeah, that was a kind of like I lived my life there. I mean, basically, I started my life there. And then I came back in 2000 to the Maldives, and I became, initially I was just a teaching assistant before my first degree. And then when I when I returned back, I got the opportunity to work as a teacher educator because I already had my postgraduate and some experience there. So from there I started my journey as a teacher educator. It was 2000. Yeah, then what happened was after that, normally in the Maldives, how would I say that English is the common medium of instruction, not Arabic. So I decided to study English because at my institution, it was more acceptable than Arabic medium, and more courses are offered in English medium than in Arabic or in local language. So I had to kind of like switch my mindset to really study English and do my further studies in English. So I actually took a challenge. Perhaps it was a risk too, because I had to actually change my whole education medium and reading and all that from Arabic to English. Yeah, it was a very, very big challenge. Then I decided to do my master's in English, and I went to Malaysia. It was just my self-finance, not given a government scholarship. Then, yeah, from there, then which was kind of interesting. I studied English and then I completed my master's, and then did my research. That was my second research, actually. I started doing research when I was in Egypt with my supervisors. But I remember even when I was studying in Malaysia, in some of my courses, I even mentioned that I would do my PhD definitely in 2 or 3 years' time of my master's completion. And interestingly, I've even mentioned I would do it in New Zealand. I don't know why. It was years back. I mean, I did never even think then why I was actually selecting or thinking about New Zealand. I did not meet anyone actually from New Zealand then, but I remember that just having some modules and there was some expectations. What would you do your for future studies? So yeah, coming back all together, like starting from in Arabic community and going to South Asian and then going to kind of European system, which was kind of a huge difference in terms
Right.
of the culture, in terms of the people, how they live, and then what things that you actually get as a person living overseas in all
Right.
these countries. And I remember when I was in Egypt, Egypt is kind of a very open community, especially because I was living in Cairo. Cairo city is a big city with multicultural, different countries you will see. Yes, it was very, very interesting. Though I am a Muslim girl there living in a hostel, I had so many friends, Christian friends. So I had the opportunity to mingle with different kind of people, and I enjoyed because the hostel where I lived, there were about 30 countries, girls living from 30 countries. So we had all different sort of girl stuff like more when having events and dance and all that. Really enjoyed my time when I was living in hostel. So that was my first experience, first sort of experience living with other cultures. And I am who I am now because of all these different cultural experiences, living with different in different countries, also meeting a whole lot of different people from different cultures as well. And when I was living in Malaysia, Malaysia also kind of like they, yes, they are South Asian, but it's also you will get to meet so many people from other cultures. So I was studying in an international Islamic university then, and then where there were so many different cultures as well. So yes, it was kind of a great. I think I am actually fortunate to have all these different experiences. Yeah, I haven't said anything about New Zealand yet. I
Sure.
think,
Yeah.
yeah, New Zealand was the most precious time I had. If I recall how my experiences were like. I really appreciate the time that I was living in New Zealand. Actually, given me new way of learning, new way of teaching, I mean, I learned a lot by having the opportunities to see other schools because I was involved in many research projects even when I was studying. So my supervisor was very generous with me, unlike other students who she had. Because I remember some of her other students will always talk about like Amina gets more opportunities. She calls me Amina, by the way. So Amina gets more opportunities. Yes, I do a lot of work with her. And I had the opportunity to visit about 20 or 23 schools in New Zealand. So part of different research projects. And that was very insightful for me because I have never seen schools like that in other countries. And though I had my practicum in Egypt, in which I had to visit 3 schools, and then in Malaysia when I was doing my masters, I did research in 2 schools. But in New Zealand, I was kind of like some days when I see the schools, I can even hardly say, okay, sometimes my mouth was open, like so good schools compared to what I have seen. really quality teaching, really quality teachers, open-minded students were having their a really good time and enjoying learning. This is something that was really, I even wrote a lot about this. I mean, some of my blogs, that how much I have appreciated seeing those um, uh, beautiful moments of learning, and I love that. I always tell my students, learning should be something that you enjoy, and it gives you really good feel that you are happy to learn, and that
Right.
thing we don't see in our country.
Yeah. That's yeah, I love the story because it's, you even talked about yourself as like you were sort of this young girl experiencing this new multiculturalism in Egypt with people from around the world, and then you sort of start to grow as a scholar, and then when you get to New Zealand, you really start to become a true expert on education and a growth into a scholar. I can see that. That's fantastic, and I can recognize some of the from my own experience too. I did a degree in South Korea, and I had just the type of experience of like going there and seeing people from around the world, and just growing up in a way that I don't think I ever would have if I was just in my own country. So the story, and so many of us, we end up returning home in some
Like
cases.
myself.
Right, right. So maybe can we talk about that? Right now, you're an assistant professor at Maldives National University. So can you kind of talk about the university and maybe the program? What who are your students? Who are you passing this experience to, and sort of what are they hoping, and what are they looking to go do?
I always loved actually talking about learning, because I talk to my students like learning is always something new. I tell you should appreciate every moment of learning, because that is not something you can always catch. You have to catch it at the right time. So yes, why did I come back? That's a very big question. I mean, I was a resident in New Zealand. I had the PR, so I was living there, and my son is still living there. By the way, he's working, and yeah, so he didn't come back with me. So yes, I was working in different research projects, and then I felt like my country needed me, and then so many people were asking why I am not coming back, since I don't have any young children. I could just do a whole lot of work if I come back to the university where I was working earlier. I mean, I had about 10 years of experience in the same university before I went to my PhD. So I loved the university, and I really wanted to come back and do some work, especially in relation to research, because I feel the Maldives really need people like us, especially those who can contribute to the and return back what the country has given them. And this is something I was in New Zealand, I always talk and encourage people, if you get the opportunity to go back, especially when you don't have that much family responsibility, like your children have grown up and you were kind of sitting there and doing work for, maybe I don't want to say other countries, but for another community which was not your origin. Yeah, but if your country needs you, I think you better be back. And I felt at some point my country needed me.
Mhm.
And then I also had another a big thing which is not necessarily related to my profession. My husband is a general surgeon, and he is a very popular general surgeon in the country. He was living in New Zealand just because of me. So many people in the health sector, they actually write on the social media even like why Dr. Ubaid is living in New Zealand, should be the time the country needs him.
Mm.
So I and he didn't even have the a professional job in New Zealand. So that was another reason why I actually decided, why both of us just there, we were young. I mean, we were just early 40s. No, I think I was late 30s, but my husband early 40s. So we thought this is the time we should be back and do some work. And yeah, I'm happy that I made that decision. And now my husband is the head of the Department of General Surgery. So yeah, the country really needed him as well, not only me. So that's a collective decision. Like we decided together to come back.
Sure.
And then yeah, my son, yeah, he's still living there. He's working in Wellington Hospital. So I'm very happy for him. So I did not have any family responsibility to have any excuse why I was living in another country. When I came back, the big question, I promoted a different approach compared to what I had done earlier. This is something, I think it was a shift, I would rather say. A shift because earlier, when before my PhD, I could find so many things that I thought it was not really appropriate teaching and learning methods used in our system. So I had seen in New Zealand and so many schools in the universities, the way of teaching and the student learning was very, very different from our country. I mean, I'm saying it very straightforward because we are still complaining or maybe writing about how we are going to bring that change to our children thinking, our teachers thinking, and our professionals thinking as well. So I'm kind of having that, not necessarily because it is part of my job, but because I am really keen to bring a change to the country. So I write so many things on local newspapers. I participate in so many panel discussions because I wanted to. I'm really wanting to bring a change to the whole culture, the learning culture, the professional teaching culture.
Right.
So some of the things that I still have in mind is I might be one of the person who can really contribute to bring that change. And I talk a lot about those things because I feel that it is important to bring that conversation into where you can bring some sort of discussions around and really deliberately people think about how to go about the change. Change is always struggling. I mean, change is not easy, especially when you have things rooted in your culture. What I have said, even in my PhD thesis, there are certain things that we can call habitus. Do you know, like habitus? Habitus is
Bordeaux,
things
right?
that you are embodied with certain things, and it's really hard to crack that shell. That's kind of a thing. So cracking that shell, the nutshell, is kind of like covering everything, and it gives little room to really open up. And some of those things, I actually brought this idea. We need to deliberately, intentionally think how we are going to go about it. What do we need to do in terms of bringing that change? And we believe, and I think I mean, the Maldivians are lucky in terms of like most of our professionals are studied overseas, especially the UK, the USA, New Zealand, Australia. So many of our university, even I would say 30% of the 30 or 40% of the university staff will be educated overseas. So those people have probably have seen all these changes, but when they come back, kind of people I think I have even read in the literature, people when they return back to their context of practice, they even become part of the logic of practice where it is established at the institutions. So that happens. But if someone really know or really want brain a change, you have to go with your thinking rather than going with the, what do you call it? The place has a specific logic of practice, but if you think that that is not the right way, you should start thinking about what to do in order to bring a change. Yeah.
Right.
So yeah, I feel a lot of things need to really rethink, not necessarily completely change, but reimagine and rethink. Yes, I would rather use that one. Yeah.
Sure. I really appreciate you sort of talk about this idea of, you go to the public media and you're sort of talking and bring your research to a wider audience, because so often in academia, we publish it in a journal and other academics read it, and only a few people who specialize in something might read it. But if you're going on to newspapers and panel shows and things like that, and talking on social media, the regular people will see it and understand it. And I think that's just a fantastic way to approach our scholarship, to bring it out of the quote unquote ivory tower, I think.
Yeah, I could share with you one example.
Sure.
Some of the things that I do. I even call TV channels, like I wanted to give this particular program. Just give me about 5 to 7 minutes from your program, so that I can talk about research and research the how to make people thirst for knowledge and research, or really establish that culture in the country. So some of those programs that I have started actually working with other people in larger TV channel, for example, I've mentioned in, and some other channels like PSM, that is public service media. So all these channels, I personally, it's not part of my job, because I really want, this is something that, what I think an obligation, or what I call a responsibility, because I'm a Maldivian. I also had the opportunity to live in other countries. I did have options not to return. And I don't necessarily need to come back and stay in the Maldives, but I came because I wanted to return back something that I had in the experience or the insights that I have. I really wanted to share and then bring that to our culture. And some of those programs are related to how to do research. And there are very few people, this is something I think I would say very rare. Not many people who are educated, they give so much knowledge or discussions in local language. Mostly they will speak in English, and they will also write in English. They will do all the things in English. But there are so many people who are not, who I would say, not obviously the local language, it would be the first language for them. It will be easier for people to really understand things. So I had this approach. Always I'll say, if you know something, even if you studied in English or in Arabic, if you really know what you have learned, you should be able to deliver it in your local language. And that is my motto. So if you're good at something, you should be able to talk about it in your local language, because it's something important. If you don't do that, your language is going to, it's not going to be there. It's just going, because especially countries like the Maldives, where the whole system is English medium, our children, we are struggling actually to make our children love the local language. They don't love the local language. And something that I started working on it, even in my family, even with the student teachers that I talk to, I always tell, please make sure your children, when they're young, don't speak to them in English, because you are really forgetting about our culture, forgetting about our language. They will need it. It's a heritage. It's a country heritage. You should not leave it like that. If you don't protect the language now, you are not going to do that later.
Mm-hmm.
It cannot be done when you think, okay, something is happening to our language, and then you decided to do something and it can be fixed. No, it cannot be done like that. So you should be doing so many things along the way as you develop children, or as you raise children. You have to really focus them and give them opportunities to speak in local language as well. So some of my articles are related to how to make our children learn the language, because our children, they don't speak in local language now. They don't speak, which is very sad. And I believe part of intelligence is also having the ability to be communicate in multilingual. If you are living in a multilingual context, having the ability to communicate with different languages adds something to your intelligence as well, because it helps you to think much broader than rather than thinking with one language. So I always tell the parents, do not restrict. Don't think that if you let your children speak in in the local language, it will influence or impact on their improvement of English. No, I don't think so. And literature has actually shown us first language is the most important thing, and then you can develop the second language, and or parallel you can do that. So that is my thinking. I write a lot about how to really help children learn language, though I am not a linguistic because I love my language.
Right. Yeah, I mean, that's important. If you're talking about culture and heritage, and that's not something that you can just work out in a book. That's something that's part of the fabric of society. So yeah, that's important.
Exactly.
How about your students? Are they training to go to be teachers, or what kind of professions are they going in to do?
Yeah, most of my student teachers, I teach some of my courses are early childhood, some in primary, a few in secondary teachers. But because I work in the educational department, which
Hmm.
which we call all the core subjects related to teaching and pedagogy and all that are under our department. So we call educational department at the Faculty of Education. So most of the subjects that I teach are related to teaching.
I
Teaching
see.
per se, like instructional psychology, developmental psychology, classroom management, curriculum studies, teaching pedagogy, and then ICT in education, and then sociology of education. I teach all these subjects because I started working even in 2000. I started teaching many subjects related to teaching field, the education field. So even when I returned back, I always say I love to take some courses from the what do you call it, first year or second year,
Mm,
because that's where you can start in building some of the principles of
you
teaching.
can mold
Yeah.
mold them there, right?
Yes. So yeah, student teachers, I love to have the first year batch one course, and then maybe if I have time, I take another master's course, because normally I will have about two PhD students. So the, I mean, I don't necessarily think that I should be just focusing on higher level, because I feel that the first year and the second year students will be also really important, especially because I am a kind of a teacher, love to have the conversational teaching, not like a really lecture type, because that's me. And my students actually love my classes, whether face to face or online. And I because I enjoy teaching, and not necessarily I'm a teacher by profession. I remember when I was very young, even when I was in the secondary school, I always say I wanted to become a teacher. I mean, there was no other thinking that who I am going to be, even when I was young. So teaching is like a part of me. And then and teaching any year group is another interesting thing. I feel even my family would say, like, the younger children, when they have interaction with me, I will start teaching something and they will enjoy. And that is something like, I don't know, a gift that I am lucky to have. Really easy for me to really conduct any teaching classes or carry out any activities that can make my students happy. The most important thing is to make my students happy. I remember, I love Rita Pearson, by the way. she, she has given a very famous popular talk that, yeah, children can be champion if you make them feel champions, right? So I have that motto always. I tell my students, you should actually think always positive about your students, because you can make them champion if you think they are
Mm,
champion, if you can make them feel champion. So it is about the students. So I teach my student teachers to take that motto in their mind. You are not teaching because you are good at teaching. You are teaching because you feel that your students are worth to become champions. So
right.
that motto, so beautifully you can translate into your practice. It's about loving the field. It's about loving the children. It's about loving the way that you teach, and
Hmm.
then live the moment and enjoy it. Live the
Right.
moment of your teaching, not because you are given a salary, not because you have so flexible hours to teach. Regardless, you just love the teaching because it is your passion. It is your passion. So yeah, I think I love teaching. I enjoy teaching.
I can
Something that I can't separate it from me. Yeah.
I can tell, and I think our listeners are gonna be able to tell too, and they're probably wishing they could, sit in one of your classes or see you teach one of these days. I guess with Zoom technology, maybe
Yes.
one of, but I guess that's kind of goes into my next question. I couldn't help when I was preparing for the interview, just kind of looking at the geography of the Maldives and sort of the location of the university and the rest of the island chain. And it's just it occurred to me that there must be challenges and barriers to the way that the nation is sort of set up. But you yourself also use technology in education. You research, you study that. So I'm kind of wondering how you've overcome that challenge or attempt to sort of overcome that challenge or work within the parameters of sort of
Yeah.
the geography.
Alan, you've actually addressed a very important point here. One of the things that I notice, yes, even in some of my publication I've highlighted, there are so many challenges and limitations, barriers in terms of our geographical situation, geographical context. But what I would say, we have grown. I mean, compared to our early education system, I remember when I was working at the university before my PhD, we had only, I don't think we had online modes per se, teaching online modes. But when I returned back in late 2018, I found so many courses that started online and some block modes. And then, yes, which actually given the opportunity for students who were living in other islands
Right.
to really study in universities. We have only two universities, both of them are in the Male city, I mean the capital city, which is very sad. We don't have other universities in islands, but they started having the outreach centers and campuses in other big cities. But this, I mean, what I'm saying is, yeah, the university even itself has grown and broadened their courses to offer online and virtual modes. Um, but we did have we did have many challenges. I think it's because of the infrastructure. We are sort of good, and when compared to other countries in the region, I mean the Asian countries where we are living, the neighboring countries. But still I feel the internet we have, the speed is very low, and we find it really difficult to communicate smoothly and seamlessly when we use the internet. So but what I see now is very very different from even last 2 years, which I would say, I think our student um, had to change. That's
Right.
something that I felt. Had to change means like there were no other options except using the internet. There were no other options except using the internet for learning, for communication, for other life purposes because of the COVID, I think.
Right.
And I'm doing a research now about about remote teaching and student learning experiences due to the COVID pandemic. And I found some of these things are really talking aloud. What had actually changed throughout this 2 years' time? Because there was no other option.
Right.
That is the only thing. People
Right.
had to change. Because people were locked down. That there were no other option. They can go to the university. They can go to other places. Every all the places were locked, and they will stay home and they will be using the internet. Students have become so familiar with the digital technologies. I'm not talking about only the young children, but also the higher education students and the young children. All of them, they have become so familiar with the use of technologies. As we say normally, okay, I think I did probably have mentioned change is always difficult, but when there are no options, when you don't have any other options, you don't think about because there are no alternatives, right? And
Right.
then Yeah, if there are no alternatives, you will use it. And then when you use it, you forget whether it was difficult or easy.
Mm,
Rather, you just use it, and then habits start to develop. Now, I think our teachers, even and some of my findings actually have shown already. They don't even think that it was difficult. Hello, just before 2 years, you were thinking it's very, very difficult to teach online. I mean, now they are saying, and some of my questions were, how confident were you before the pandemic, and how confident are you after the pandemic? So there were specific tools given and how they become familiar. And interestingly, they did not know anything about such tools, and they become so confident in using those tools because of the pandemic. So
right.
what I say, sometimes you should not think that okay, yeah, we all really, we are very, very sad because of the really the terrible time we are having our children and all that. But there are so many good things. And yesterday, I think I published an article about this. And what I said, teachers got, this is what I said, teachers got the opportunity to shine because of the
Mm,
COVID-19, because they have done so much work to manage and mitigate the challenges that they had because of the school closure. And teachers
right.
learn to use technologies, they learn to engage students, they learn to make the home setting a comfortable place, and talking to parents and really bring them to the page to manage the learning situations for the children. These are things that we have never seen. The schools, they had only about parents meeting earlier. Now it is ongoing everyday conversation. Hello, this is the thing that we want. We want the parents and teachers to be together in order to provide better learning for our children. Now this is happening. Why? Because we did not have any alternatives.
Yeah.
So, yeah. And now I feel like our teachers are champions. I call them champions. Some of my Facebook posts, I said even, I feel like my teachers are champions, and my student teachers are so motivated and really passionate about bringing a change and make children really learn even during their online practicum. I have observed how they were really passionately bringing changes, really not necessarily they had, because most teacher education programs, they did not have this kind of a topic area, how to manage teaching during crisis time.
Right.
There were no topics like that. But because student teachers had to complete their practicum online, some of those things they have, if they, because the university has given the student teachers the option to do online if it was not the final practicum. Mostly they have 3 practicums. So the final practicum, we will still feel that they will need to do in a school setting, because that is part of the big part of what they will do in schools, right? So they cannot graduate unless they have the school setting practicum. Yes, they can do if there is first practicum and the second practicum online. But what I have seen is, because in my class, especially my early childhood group, which I had a very beautiful bunch of students who were so passionate about teaching and young children, and then they were sharing some of their teaching experiences. I was actually enjoying my time with them, because they said, they call me Miss. So they say, Miss, actually, we actually dance in our class, like in front of the screen, and the children will dance. And I tell the children, bring all the family members also, let them dance with you. So that is kind of in an environment. Even in a physical setting class, they would do that, right? But online also they can do that. And they ask the children, go outside, explore the tree, bring 2 3 leaves, and let's do some experiments. How is it the leaf printing is happening? How does it look like? So many practical activities. Teachers started learning about new ways to bring into the classrooms on online class.
Mm,
These are new ideas, and I am writing about these things because these are beautiful ideas for teaching. And I appreciate the time, even though it's a hard time during the COVID pandemic for everybody. But you can make it beautiful. You can make it beautiful. So don't think it's always about the hiccups. No, there are some beautiful moments. Outlaid, yes.
I love your positivity. It's just it's infectious, I think, and I'm sure your students. I mean, I can tell your students probably have that from you and build off of that. So that's great. As somebody who's looked at some of the things in COVID with sort of a half glass empty myself, and
Yes.
hearing your silver lining and talking about the positivity, that makes myself feel good. Hopefully the viewers with listening to this at home, they're thinking that as well. So that's
Ellen, actually, this is something very new for the Maldives because our teachers are not familiar with technology that much before the COVID, before the COVID-19. So, but now they don't feel hesitant to talk about it anymore. They're not reluctant to share their experiences, how they use technologies. And I had already seen that when I asked student teachers in my new courses, so what do you feel about the use of technology in your teaching? So now they talk so freely without having that hesitance that whether I'm doing right or wrong, because that thing is there earlier. Yeah, I can see the change. I can see the change happening. Yeah.
That's fantastic. We're kind of coming to the end of the interview. Just maybe one final question. We talked about the students. We even heard a little bit about media and this type of thing, and maybe I mentioned something about parents. But how about the government? Have you had any luck with sort of the government and the ear of officials or different programs or anything like that?
So I am working with the Ministry of Education in about 2-3 projects related to parental involvement in education. Another one is school improvement program, which is led by myself. And those projects are very much related to school research and stuff, especially for those schools in some regions where their student learning is identified as something that we need to address and support. Through the research, we are kind of trying to provide additional input for helping those teachers to improve their student learning, because those schools are identified as low in their grades. So I am part of that project, and I am leading with a team. And I wrote that project, and we received World Bank funding for that. And that is going to be across 12 atolls and about 119 schools.
Wow.
And the communities where these schools are, some of those communities are very small communities and islands. And I'm also leading some projects for the higher education, particularly teacher education institutions. We have about 4 teacher education institutions, and out of them 2 universities and others were colleges. So I am working with many teacher education institutions, particularly improving their teacher education programs, especially for those projects where we found a lot of programs which are offered in local language. They did not have enough books for those programs written in local language. And it's not really because for those who are doing the programs in English medium, obviously there are many books, but for the local language medium programs, they did not have any difference. So I had actually written a proposal to really publish those books, and we received funding as well from overseas. So it's about for me now at this moment. I think for the time being, a lot of my work is involved in writing proposals to different grant for seeking funding and from overseas and local. And so every single day, mostly I am kind of involved in writing proposals. I do a lot of those kind of things, and I have about 15 research projects involved in, even at the moment, apart from my teaching. And I'm also helping many teacher education institutions to come together, do some collaborative work, because I believe you can't possibly think as an individual. It's a collective thing if you're going to If you're going to do something good for your country, like that is okay, that institution works separately and the other institution works separately. It doesn't work that way. You have to work, if you're going to improve something in schools, you have to work together, because we want all our graduates to be really good. It's not a competition. It's not competition. Okay, the more these national university graduates are going to be the best students. No, you have to make all student teachers are good, and then you can bring a change to the country. So my thing is, it's not about only my institution. It's about my country. It's not one institution. It's about my country. I am doing what I'm doing because I'm doing it for my country, and I have no other intention out of it. And I always tell that I don't work for the salary. And no, I'm not interested because of the higher salary or any other. Because I'm but we thank God that I am living like I don't say young mom, but I have time to give now. I have okay, I have experience to share, and this is the time where that I feel do big things. It's not just go with single institution or single group thing, rather the big ideas that you can bring to the country. So my message for all the people who are like teacher educators, I always tell, let's do things together. Let's do collaborative work. So I invite people to be part of my research projects, and I'm doing a lot of many research projects with other universities as well, because I feel that it's one space that you're working together, because your aim is one. Your aim is improving education in the country. That you can't do it if you are just focusing on one institution. Yeah, that's what I'm.
Just from this interview, you have sort of, you're working across the society and all the different sectors, from the people and sort of the regular people and across the islands to the government. So it's just great to hear, and I really love your attitude about the whole way of teaching. It's just positive and inspiring. So Shafiya, thanks for joining us on the podcast. We really appreciate it.
Yeah. And I would like to add something. I always tell people, you have to take initiatives. Don't wait for someone to tell you what to do. You know what you need. You have a target to reach, then you take the initiative. Don't ask whether it's okay or not. You go for it. Check how it's going to work for you with your main target. Yeah, I am trying to establish a research culture in a good school learning, what I say, good teachers, and that is my aim for our country. I always say my country. Yeah.
Well, there's no doubt, from talking to you that you're gonna get that goal. So we'll look forward to follow your career and maybe back in the future. So thank you very much for joining us today.
Thank you very much, Alan.
And this concludes our KIX EAP podcast, which is released every first Wednesday of the month. Of course, the opinions expressed on the KIX EAP podcast are solely those of the host and the guest. The KIX EAP podcast is made possible by KIX, which stands for Knowledge and Innovation Exchange. KIX is an initiative of the Global Partnership for Education. Globally, KIX is administered by the International Development Research Center in Canada. NORAG in Geneva hosts one of the 4 regional hubs of KIX. Thanks for listening. Find us on the NORAG or GPE KIX websites. You can subscribe to the KIX EAP podcast, newsletter, and webinar series, and also learn about KIX global or regional projects. Additionally, you can subscribe directly on Spotify or SoundCloud to receive notifications of the new monthly podcast episodes.